students. Welcome to Mr. Sandwich Reads. I am Mr. Sandwich, and I am reading Jerry Spinelli, Stargirl. I'm reading chapter 23. You can tell it's a casual look today. I am wearing my hat here to keep the glare off my head, and my Mario shirt to celebrate Friday today. I hope you're doing well. I hope you've been enjoying Stargirl here as we embark on getting towards the end here of Stargirl. So please follow along and finish it up. And I hope you're enjoying. This is on page 126. Just going to flip back, as you know I like to do at this point, and read the last paragraph that we left off on. Yeah, why do you think there are 18 pebbles in my wagon? Oh, I remember what happens here. That's all I had to read. They kiss here at the end. We get a says, I can tell you that was no saint kissing me. So the wagon, she has a wagon with 20 pebbles. At any given time, 20 is the most. She says usually it's at like 10, give or take 2 or 3, depending on her mood. So 20 is like the very happiest. She says like 17 is the highest, but it's at the end of this chapter, it's at 18, because she has Leo in her life. There's that romance. Call it love. I don't know. That's my question for you. Is it love? Are they in love, do we think? I don't know. Something to consider. They certainly are romantically involved at the very least. And she then goes to 18 pebbles. So now the highest level of joy for Stargirl. All right, page 126, chapter 23. Those were the best times when we were alone, together, out of school. We took long walks around town and into the desert to her enchanted place. We sat on park benches and people watched. I introduced her to strawberry banana smoothies. I borrowed the pickup and drove us to Red Rock and Glendale. On weekends, we went to Archie's. On his back porch, we talked of 1,000 things and laughed and swooned and pipe smoked and ate pizza. She presented her oratorical contest speech to Senor Saguaro. We never spoke of the shunning. I loved weekends. But Mondays always followed Sundays. And the shunning, it was clear now, had come to me. It was less absolute for me than for her, but it was there. I saw it in the eyes that shifted away from mine, the shoulders that turned, the chatter that seemed less loud around me now than before. I fought it. I tested its limits. In the courtyard, between classes, in the lunchroom, I called out to others just to see if they would respond. When someone turned and nodded, I felt grateful. Just for a nod. If someone spoke to me, especially if I had not spoken first, I wanted to cry. I had never realized how much I needed the attention of others to confirm my own presence. I told myself that the shunning was more painful for me than for Stargirl. I told myself that she was too busy being herself to notice that she was being ignored. And in fact, she continued to give birthday people a ukulele serenade, and to decorate her desk, and to distribute assorted kindnesses. I told myself that even if she did notice, she didn't care. I understood why this was happening to me. In the eyes of the student body, she was part of my identity. I was her boyfriend. I was Mr. Stargirl. Students said things, not to me, not directly, but tuned for me to overhear, even as they pretended I was nowhere near. They said she was a self-centered spotlight hogger. They said she thought she was some kind of saint. I cringed at that. And that she was better than the rest of us. He cringed at that because if you remember in the last chapter, he kind of has a visceral response. Visceral meaning like it comes from your very core. It's like a gut reaction, and he says, like, what are you, going out for saints or something? She's talking about making like a baby book for this kid across the street, Peter. He's like, what are you going for, saint? And he realizes how mean and sharp that sounds. So when he hears other people, it stings a little bit for him because he maybe he's got that memory, that unpleasantness he had. I cringed at that, and that she was better than the rest of us, is what they were saying. They said she wanted everyone else to feel guilty for not being as nice and wonderful as she was. They said she was a phony. Most of all, they said she was the reason why the Mica Electrons were not soon to become Arizona State basketball champions. Kevin had been right. When she started cheering for the other team, she did something bad to her own team. To see one of their own priming the opposition did something to the team's morale that hours of practice could not overcome. And the last straw, everyone seemed to agree, was the Sun Valley game when Stargirl rushed across the court to aid Kovac, the Sun Valley star. All of this was affirmed by our own star, Ardsley himself, who said that when he saw Micah cheerleader giving comfort to the enemy, the heart went out of him. She was why they lost the next game so miserably to Red Rock. They hated her for it, and they would never forgive. Unlike Stargirl, I was aware of the constant anger of our schoolmates, seething like snakes under a porch. In fact, I was not only aware of it, but at times I also understood their point of view. There were even moments when something small and huddled within me agreed with it. But then I would see her smile and take a swan dive into her eyes, and the bad moment would be gone. I saw, I heard, I understood, I suffered. But whose sake was I suffering for? I kept thinking of Senor Saguaro's question. Whose affection do you value more, hers or the others? I became angry. I resented having to choose. I refused to choose. I imagined my life without her and without them, and I didn't like it either way. I pretended it would not always be like this. In the magical moonlight of my bed at night, I pretended she would become more like them and they would become more like her, and in the end, I would have it all. Then she did something that made pretending impossible. Okay. It's a short chapter. We got another short chapter too. So I might just hop right into that actually and just do a 2-for-1 here. You get the 2-for-1. The BOGO, they call that, the buy one get one. You can get that here. I'm going to read 24 in a moment. Chapter 23 though, this is kind of a heartbreaking. It's like you feel him pulled away from Stargirl because of the shunning, because of the social pressure. It's why I think this is such a great, powerful book for. I'd say grades as young as 7, 8, 9. I think 8 and 9 is a great time to read this book when young people are really feeling that pressure. I know I certainly did at that age, and that's certainly typical to feel the need to belong to a group. In chapter 23, this to me is the conflict. I have been hinting at this over and over again, and it is to me encapsulated in this chapter the person versus society versus the whole, and the group think, and kind of going against the grain here. And he's paying for it. He feels isolated and alone when he's not with Stargirl. When he's with Stargirl, everything's hunky dory. On a weekend, he feels great, but then Monday comes, and it's that person versus society conflict. All right, well, so let's jump in. Let's go a little bit further here. Come on. That was so quick. Chapter 24, page 129. We continue in Jerry Spinelli's Stargirl. Roadrunner. No one said the word to me directly, but I kept hearing it since I arrived at school one day, several days after the kiss on the sidewalk. It seemed more dropped behind than spoken, so that I kept walking into it. Roadrunner. Was there something on the plywood Roadrunner that I should read? I had study hall coming up third period. I'd look into it then. In the meantime, I had second period Spanish. As I headed for my seat, I looked out the window, which faced the courtyard. There was something written on the Roadrunner, all right, but I wouldn't have to go outside to read it. I could read it from here. I could have read it from a low-flying airplane. White paper. No, it was a bedsheet, covered the whole bird. Painted on the sheet in broad red brush strokes was a Valentine heart enclosing the words, Stargirl loves Leo. Oh, that might answer my question here of do you think this is love? I started out saying, do you think it's love? Or is it possible to somebody that feels like they're in love, but it's not actually love? I don't know. Do you think it's what I've used the term puppy love in earlier segments when young people are kind of just figuring out those emotions? But do you think that it's heartfelt? It's true love. Well, either way, it's on display here, so let's see how this goes. My first impulse was to drag the Spanish teacher to the window and say, "Look, she loves me." My second impulse was to run outside and rip the sign away. Until now, I had never been the target of her public extravagance. I felt a sudden, strange kinship with Hilary Kimball. I understood why she had commanded Stargirl not to sing to her. I felt spotlighted on a bare stage. I couldn't concentrate on my schoolwork or anything else. I was a mess. It's funny that it uses that I felt spotlighted on a bare stage. If you recall, I've talked about how Kevin is the one that hosts the hot seat, while as Leo is really used to being behind the scenes and being the director. He's a bit bashful. He doesn't like to be noticed, doesn't like to be in the spotlight, and he even uses that metaphor here. I felt spotlighted on a bare stage. I couldn't concentrate on my schoolwork or anything else. I was a mess. At lunch that day, I was afraid to look at her. I counted one blessing. I had not yet worked up the nerve to sit with her each day. I kept stoking my conversation with Kevin. I felt her presence, her eyes, 3 tables to my left. I knew she was sitting there with Dory Dalston, the only friend who had not deserted her. Excuse me. The only friend that had not deserted her. I felt the faint tug of her gaze on the back of my neck. Ignoring my wishes, my head turned on its own, and there she was, smiling to beat the band, waving grandly, and horrors, blowing me a kiss. I snapped my head back and dragged Kevin out of the lunchroom. When I finally dared to look again at the courtyard, I found that someone had torn the sign away. Thumbtacks at the corners pinned 4 white scraps of bedsheet to the plywood. I managed to avoid her by taking different routes between classes, but she found me after school, came shouting after me as I tried to slink away. Leo! Leo! She ran up to me, breathless, bursting, her eyes sparkling in the sun. Did you see it? I nodded. I kept walking. Well? She was hopping beside me, punching my shoulders. What do you think? What could I say? I didn't want to hurt her feelings. I just shrugged. Wow, that impressed, huh? She was mocking me. She reached into her bag and pulled out her rat. Maybe he's shy, Cinnamon. Maybe he'll tell you how thrilled he was to see the sign. She set him on my shoulder. I yelped. I swept the rat off and sent him flying to the ground. She scooped him up and stroked him, all the while staring at me dumbstruck. I could not face her. I turned and walked alone. She called, I guess you don't want to hear me practice my speech, huh? I did not answer. I did not look back. The next day, I faced the full impact of the sign. I thought I had truly suffered from the spillover of Stargirl's shunning, but that was nothing now that the full torrent was turned on me. Nothing now that the full torrent. That was nothing now that the full torrent was turned on me. Of course, Kevin thankfully talked to me. So did a few other friends, but the rest was silence. A second desert imposed upon the one I already lived in, where high was rare as rain. I came to the courtyard in the morning before opening bell, and all I saw were backs of heads. People shouldered past me, calling others. Doors closed in my face. There was laughter, there was fun, but it skipped over me like a flat stone on water. One morning, as I was running a teacher's errand, I saw someone named Renshaw walking across the courtyard. I barely knew the kid, but we were the only two in the courtyard at that moment, and I had to, so to speak, touch the stove that I knew was hot. Renshaw, I called. There was no other voice but mine. Renshaw! He never turned, never wavered, never slowed down. He kept walking away from me, opened a door, and was gone. So what? I kept telling myself. What do you care? You never speak to each other. What's Renshaw to you? But I did care. I couldn't help myself from caring. At that moment, there was nothing more I wanted in the world than a nod from Renshaw. I prayed that the door would burst open and he would be there saying, Sorry, Borlock, I wasn't listening. What did you want? But the door stayed closed, and I knew what it felt like to be invisible. I'm invisible, I said to Kevin at lunch. Nobody hears me, nobody sees me. I'm the freaking invisible man. Kevin just looked at his lunch and wagged his head. How long's it going to go on? I demanded. He shrugged. What did I do? My voice was louder than I intended. He chewed, he stared. At last, he said, You know what you did. I stared at him like he was crazy. I badgered him some more, but of course he was perfectly right. I knew exactly what I had done. I had linked myself to an unpopular person. That was my crime. And what do you think of Leo here? He kind of gives Stargirl the cold shoulder here, or is very bristly when she asks him about the sign. He's giving into that social pressure, that conflict of person versus society. In that last chapter, in the last two chapters here, the society is beating out whatever affection he has for Stargirl. Is he right to feel that way? Is it natural to feel that way? I imagine. Do you think people are naturally inclined to be in groups? Um, what do you think of her rooting for the other basketball team? Is that reasonable? I mean, the other kid got hurt, and now everybody's turning on her for being concerned for the other team. Um, so what do you think here? What should Leo do? Should he just embrace his feelings for Stargirl and you know do away with whatever the peer pressure, like he says, was it Renshaw there? He's like, who's Renshaw to me? It's not, this guy's not even a friend, but somehow his ignoring Leo is getting to Leo. So feel free to leave comments. Please like if you like, and please subscribe if you haven't. This is Mr. Sandwich, and I'll say good day.